Welcome to Soft Serve. My name is Mads Williams and I am a guide to female sensuality. Today might be a quickie. I am in that place with the podcast where it's this deciphering of how much is this a personal diary? How much is this an educational piece? How much is this a very clear topic by topic situation? And honestly, I think it will evolve each week. I'm a very interchangeable person. And that's the other thing I always layer up my knowledge about my human design. And normally I'm not designed to be consistent, but there is something in the showing up to the podcast for 10 weeks in a row or just, consistently plonking yourself on the mat that I'm actually learning so much from. And it brings me to today's topic, which is what happens when you lose the art? What happens when you lose the practice? When you lose your flow on something that has become really beautiful or foundational to your life? And I think particularly around the new year, we can talk a lot about resolutions or new beginnings or starting something that you've been putting off or that you've been desiring. But what happens when you fall off the bandwagon, when you had something that you haven't necessarily been prioritizing? And I'm always in the business of no shame. So often the reason it hasn't been a priority is because something else has. Something else has shifted to fill that place. And so for me, lately, what I've realized is that my self-pleasure practice has fallen to the wayside slightly. And in that, what has kicked up has been so interesting to observe. There's been way more overthinking. There's been a way less groundedness to the way I feel in my, not necessarily my body, but just all that oxygen is up circling around my head. So therefore, there will be a shift in how embodied I am. A lot of the time my practice is bringing that sexual energy up from my sexual organs, from my yoni up and through my body, through my chest, to my heart, to my breast, to my third eye, to my crown. And so there is this like connecting in with my root chakra, that base that keeps me tied to the earth, and connecting it to divinity or source or the ether. So I'm in that beautiful figure of 8 where I feel really held and supported and like locked in, but in a way where there is still movement and fluidity, but my kind of crown and root feel really anchored in where they're supposed to be. So watching that slip has been super fascinating. And the reason for that is multiple things. Summer, I think when we're in this peak heat and the sun's out and we're in our socializing era, sometimes we can override what the body is actually craving in lieu of these really convincing stories that the brain makes up for. No, I have to be in the sun and I can't miss it and all these things. And so actually I find summer becomes a really important time to be disciplined and devotional to what you need, and not from a place of restriction, but just a really gorgeous honoring of your own boundaries. And in that we flex who we actually are and who we actually want to be. And therefore it's all growth. And of course, we have fun. That is the beauty of this season, that you do welcome in more play and longer days and maybe people you haven't seen for a really long time. So summer has certainly brought that new level of fire to my life that isn't always present. And then in having more intimate experiences with people, lately I've been having sex with someone else. And so that is so fun. 1, because I love it. 2, because everything for me is always the school of life. And so it feeds my work and it feeds my clients and it feeds how I see the world. But also because it's such a dance and expansion in intimacy. It's such a dance and expansion into crossing thresholds that I haven't crossed before. There's this interesting thing that happens because this sexual practice has been such a focus for me for the last 2 years, that I have been stretching in my vulnerability. But until you're actually met with a physical mirror, a physical opportunity in the form of a lover, in the form of a partner, a lot of that it's not that I would say it's theoretical because it still is showing up in how I show up for work and how I show up in my partnerships and the type of person I lead as in the world. But there is a real checkpoint that you get to cross or check in with when you are in intimacy sexually with someone. So that has been amazing. And I've been so grateful for the opportunity to grow. And I've really felt like that is what's happening. And I do think life gives you the timelines, the people, the spaces to do these things that don't always feel like they're in your control. Often they feel really orchestrated for you so that you realize, okay, this is the cosmic curriculum this week. This is what I'm working through. So I always take live feedback and live data of what's showing up as the jumping off point for what my homework is. But I then have been able to zoom out, see the bigger picture, and just pull back. I'm queen of talking about pulling back your energy, and that's not to withhold it from someone or in a game playing way. That's actually just a beautiful way to stay in equilibrium. So, just in that clocking, interesting. My focus has been on union, which is amazing, but I'm now ready to reshift and put some of that devotion back into my solo time. And what's been amazing about feeling like I've lost priority around it or lost intention around it, or even truthfully that it wasn't even something I was thinking about because there was so much gorgeous, fruitful activity in my life. But it's that thing that often we don't realize something until it becomes uncomfortable or a bit clunky. And so what was happening, like I was referring to in that overthinking, is that all that energy that I normally circulate into a restorative form, into a way that fuels up my energy, it was going to the wrong place. And so beyond the overthinking causing me annoyance, because overthinking usually is coming from the critic who's usually quite mean and convincing you of things that aren't true. The thing that's been the most impactful to how I live is that it has cut off a slight source of creativity. Even thinking about what to talk about with the podcast, I don't necessarily want to mine my personal life as the direction every week. And when I am really channeling that energy through my body intentionally, then I'm usually gifted the thing that needs to come through from something outside of me. So for my work, it is a really important factor. The other thing I adore about this unfolding of events, other than the fact is that I've been getting to have sex with a beautiful human, is that it's really revealed to me something that was theory, something that I felt really passionate about, something that I speak on all the time. That concept of you wouldn't expect your partner to exercise for you in your body to get the results. In getting to experience gorgeous intimacy, gorgeous sexual encounters, great pleasure, amazing fun, new experiences, all the things, yes, that has made my life infinitely delicious. No doubt about it. But there is still something so pivotal in the solo practice because in feeding myself, I feed every part of my reality. I know I'm a broken record, but I feed my work. I feed my friends. I go back into those sexual encounters more confident, comfortable, open, expanded. So then, even in partnership, there is more ground to cover. So it was very helpful being able to say to my beautiful clients in partnership, in long term marriages, in new relationships, whatever it is, even if you're in that gorgeous, high vibrational sexual dance where you have a lot of present, current chemistry and devotional time together, the solo practice is still the backbone of everything. And not just in my opinion, now in my experience. And I love that. I do really think whenever you step into a guide position, whether that is literally in a conversation with your friends or whether that is your line of work, that you then get thrown opportunities. So the universe is like, okay, well, we see you. We see you stepping up into this role. And if you're going to be in that position, well, then we need you to be schooled in the realities, to be schooled in the experiences, to be able to relate, to be able to communicate, to be able to share and pass on what you're trying and trialing and surmising from your life. And it just feels like another beautiful reason why soft serve is called soft serve. I've made the joke before that men often ask, is it called self serve? And let's be honest, it might as well be, because in the self serving, we become greater lovers, greater partners, greater teachers, greater students. I believe that with my whole fucking soul and my whole yoni. And so even in your current life, if it's not currently solo, I would really invite you to consider, how can I make space for this to be something that I trial or focus on or prioritize in my week to week. But I wanted to talk about what to do. One, if you've never started, and two, if you're like me and maybe there have been times where it's been a real focus or you felt really empowered by your sexual energy and that's just not quite here at the moment. I always remember when I stayed with my sister and her family over Christmas one year, and we were doing a podcast at the time where we would talk about the cosmic and the corporate approach to life. And we joked that it's really hard to be cosmic when you have children around, because their needs and their alignments and their attention span and all those things dictate where your energy goes. And so I want to acknowledge that I, in my singledom, have so much space. That is really important. But in all of our lives, there is still the potential to prioritize what is important to us. And I have heard how many times I've used the word priority in this recording already, but that's because you get to decide if it is for you. I did have a friend pull me up on this very concept of what about the people that don't have the space and the time. And to that, I did have some slight resistance, because we get to have agency in our life at the end of the day for whether we squeeze it in, whether we get up early, whether we stay up late. And not to say that some people's lived experiences aren't more easeful than others. That is absolutely not it. But when we start playing in that field of excuses, we've already handed over the reins of our life and we're in our victim, and we are therefore at the will of something on a slightly lower negative frequency. So find your way in that. Find that dance of, yeah, some things are shit and some things are unfair and some things are hard and sometimes there is just no fucking time. And sometimes in the no fucking time, that is absolutely not going to be the priority. But then accept that and not making that a story all on itself. But if you're someone where, okay, let's like be real, it hasn't been the priority because timing hasn't felt like it's yours. Well, what's one way you can show up this week? Like literally, is it 5 minutes in the mirror? Is it giving yourself a full hour on a Saturday? Is it asking your partner to take the kids out for a run so that you can be in an uninterrupted space? Is it getting up early at 5 a.m. so that it is only you? You're going to know. And when we start looking at life like that, weirdly, life gives you more time. Life gives you more space. If you start one really empowered, bold action where you reclaim something that is a priority to you and important to you, often the ripple effect is really fucking extreme in the best possible way. So I wanted to give that to you. It can be really small. You do not have to be out here self-pleasuring or being intimate with yourself every day of the week. But I would also argue there is opportunity every day. Most of us shower every day. Most of us change our clothing at multiple times of the day every day. A lot of us who are in partnership have the potential to lean into a little bit more intimacy, to lean into a kiss, or not even a kiss, even like a bum graze while you're cooking dinner, or a hug where you actually let your heart melt into the other. Where are all the walls up for you? Whether it's that you don't engage with your body when you're getting dressed, or whether that hi to your partner versus an actual greeting of your bodies. Where are you on autopilot rather than being in the sensuality of the present moment? I truly think there is always a little bit more to mine in the present. And that isn't to say that we're not content. It's to say, oh, actually, when we start noticing how much is available here, our life just gets abundantly more sensual, pleasurable, beautiful, satisfying. So maybe in hearing this, if it's a new practice or you've fallen off your practice, what's one commitment you can make? And just like me in this podcast, what would it happen if you show up consistently? What if you did show up to that one tiny thing for 10 weeks? What kind of impact might that have? Are you curious enough to see? Is there your own little commitment in this moment that you feel drawn to making? Often I find the more in touch I am with my intuition or my guides, it's in hearing those questions or conversations that something will literally just spring off in my head. It's not that you necessarily need to go looking for the answer. You might just have heard it, or you might want to take those questions to the journal and see what comes through in your writing. Or maybe even it is in your own conversation with a friend that things get revealed, or with your partner. So I would invite that we all think about our shifting priorities and what we really want from this season. What do we want to feel when we think about the word sexy? How do we want to feel or move in our day to day? I had this thought yesterday. If I had more money, what would I do? And the answer was I would buy some more clothes that I've got my eyes on. Okay, so expression, that's kind of a given. We often would want material things. I don't need them, but that's what I would like. And I would invest in strength training. I just think the day I can really prioritize the gym will be a really fun, sexy day. But that is not my focus right now. And actually, everything else is really fucking great. I feel really satisfied and grateful for what I already have in my life. So if you're to kind of extend that metaphor back to your sexual practice, what would you do if you felt sexier? What would that mean? How might you speak? How might you dress? What might you say? What might your work be? What might your relationship status reflect? How might you change how you date, how you are with your partner, how you are with your children, anything, whatever. But what would it mean if you were sexier? So that is the question I'm going to leave you with to ponder. And if you get any critic, that's interesting too. Take note. If you get, oh, I'll be judged, I'll be shamed, people will say this, that's amazing. Anytime we understand what's running in our system on autopilot, we can bring it to the surface and free it. Because in the freedom, we then get to actually become and embody the version of ourselves that when we're allowed to fantasize about our higher self, like that's who she is. So if we get those nudges of criticism and judgment, amazing. That's literally like mining gold dust. Don't let them just pop and fade. Start working out how we can talk to them and how we can replace them. Can we give them a name that's different to us? I had a really strong critic come through the other day, and she was someone I try and ignore. And so I hadn't spent much time with her. And in this conversation with a friend, it was so helpful because we were able to say, who the fuck is that? She doesn't sound anything like me. And my friend said, I've never met her before. And in the talking of it out, we realized she was society. And it was in that way that I think of Inside Out, where it's joy and anxiety and all the different emotions have a name and a character. And you can then separate them from Riley, the main character. You know, I can separate this society woman living in me from Mads. And when I feel into it, society, she's wearing this frumpy jumper and this long frumpy skirt all the way down to her ankles, and her face and her hair have no life force, and she's much older, and I genuinely don't know the last time she had any sexual experience. And so I love it because she's still a version of me, but she's a version of me I would not take advice from. And it's that thing that I really only want to take advice from either my own guides, my own intuition, or from people who I deeply respect and who I think, oh, I wouldn't mind a bit of that way of life in my life. And so when I look at society, I think, oh, I don't want to grow up to be you. And if anything, you, baby girl, could learn a lot from me and let me gift you what I've learned from soft serve. Let me gift you what I've learned from my sensuality practice. And then the dynamic shifts, and no longer is my inner critic in control, but I am welcoming society in, giving her a lot of love and giving her the tools to have a much more embodied, sensual, gorgeous existence that I value. So that can also be a really beautiful tool to give it a name. I have the word Brian for my brain, but even that has lost a little bit of power because this voice of this one specific critic is so fully fledged. She has such a unique personality. So being able to give her that has gifted me back myself, and it's gifted me back my own timeline. I've been able to relieve some of the pressures that are society based, that are about money, that are about status, that are about accolades that don't necessarily make my heart or soul sing, but they are important to her. And so I just get to not shame her, but invite her along and show her a different way. So thank you so, so much for being here. I really do hope that in this refocusing of energy and priorities, that much more gorgeous insight is going to come through about the future of this podcast and what next week's episode will be all about. But for now, there is just a little one to leave you with. I'm really grateful for your presence. I'm really grateful for your questions or guidance or anything that you're getting out of this experience, because it does really feed how soft surf serves you all. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I will speak to you next week and sending you huge, huge love. Okay, talk to you soon. Bye.